Good morning. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I'm your host, Don Irvine, and joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, garbage, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, maggots, weirdos, and of course, those dog-faced pony soldiers.
So just for any viewers that are out there at any point in time, it's like I told Brian, though I guess I snuck it in on him that he can go casual. So this may be the first time he's outdressed me on the show.
Almost certainly.
Yeah, usually it's like, yeah, we're equal, or I mean, even when you're casual on the road trips, I think I still wear a tie most of the time. I don't remember. Maybe I go casual. We've done 303 of this particular edition version of the show, so I have totally lost track of what we've been doing in many cases.
That's right.
And that's what, like I said, I said before, this is only this edition of the show. You and I have been doing this thing for since at least 2016?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like 8 years, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I know you mentioned the other day you had a meeting at MRC and Brent mentioned my father and all this kind of stuff, which I'm curious about. But, my father would be shocked beyond belief to see me doing something like this. Okay. Because I was, as the only son, I mean, I resisted doing a lot of things at AIM and things like that and concentrate on the business side of this. And the thought that I would ever actually start doing anything related to broadcasting and talking about this stuff, there was a period of time where I filled in and did some media monitor things with Cliff Kincaid, or I subbed in for Cliff when Cliff wasn't available with my father. But that was a very different mechanism because it was a scripted 3-minute program that was recorded, 5 shows all at once. That went out, that was then sent out to radio stations. This, as our viewers have seen, we are a freewheeling, pretty unscripted. We don't have teleprompters. I've kind of got a little list of topics that we kind of go through just to keep me on track a little bit. But what we say is what we say. We don't have any pre-written remarks down. It's whatever hits us, and so it's
live. You've had to suffer through my coughing fits and all that kind of stuff. It's live TV. Well, you get what you get.
That's right. What you see is what you get. I think that is still. I think that's still the computer term. In the old days they had that. I think the WYSIWYG.
WYSIWYG. That's right.
WYSIWYG, right? All right. Before we get on to the news, and we've got plenty of news, I think. I don't know what. I didn't check just now, but I know about 20 minutes ago I looked out the window, and it was snowing. And I don't know
it's snowing here.
It's snowing there. I mean, it was like light, wet snow. And I checked the weather app, which is usually never quite right, and it says it was going to change to rain, which is fine. But I'm like, okay, well, I didn't see that one coming. I should have checked, but light, wet snow is fine.
That's the best kind. The big fat flakes, and it literally looks impressive, and it doesn't stick at all. That's snow for the masses.
This is our last show of the year. We are we'll give everybody a break, ourselves included, and build up for the new year, which will be probably plenty of stories. By the time we get back, it'll be
January 8th.
Yeah. It'll be we'll have new Congress will have been sworn in and all this kind of stuff. So we're taking a break for the holidays. So just be aware of that. But we've had a lot of fun this year, I think. So I was in Utah last week, just to update the viewers, and I had my grandson, newest grandson, was born on the 1st of December. We left here on the what was last Tuesday? The 9th, the 10th?
I'm totally brain fried.
Anyway, whatever day it was.
10th or so, 9th or 10th.
Anyway, so we left a few days. What had transpired, though, between the day he was born to the day we got there was just a couple of days beforehand. He went into respiratory distress and actually had to be flown by helicopter to what they call Primary Children's Hospital in Salt Lake City. They actually had to revive him.
Wow!
And he was in the hospital for about a week, and they finally released him. So once he was finally breathing on his own and sleeping through the night, he's still got a feeding tube issue at home. As I try to figure out his swallowing issue right now, but yeah, it's like, can you? I don't know. I mean, when this happens, I mean, young children, unfortunately, go through a lot. There's a lot of that stuff. I mean, it happens. But I think we've seen stories, whether or not it's in their families or other places, of people with issues with their young children and whatnot. But it was really brought home to me on this trip, and thank goodness my wife is there's something about a mother and a grandmother and their attachment to young infants that it's like, my son and I, we were kind of useless, but my wife was just.
They know what to do. See, that's that's one of those things. Is like how there's a God, because like the moms are ready for that, right? They just know what to do. The right thing occurs to them over and over and over again.
Right. It was so natural because one of the problems, he was very fussy. The nurses, no one could really get him to calm down. And the first day we went into the hospital, my wife took him in her arms and just started doing it, and he was fine. Yeah. It was the first time he had been like that since he'd been at the hospital. He got a little fussy later on, but I mean, she spent another night over there at my son's request. Didn't get really a wink of sleep herself, but he slept all through the night, which was, just another thing showing it was another miracle for us, another great thing that paved the path for him to return home and everything like that. So, yeah, it was pretty exhausting for my son and my daughter-in-law. And yeah, my son was a wreck, lack of sleep, the whole trauma thing. And apparently they gave him a T-shirt for our grandson, which is kind of like his first helicopter ride. Not a T-shirt you necessarily want.
Uh-oh.
And all of that. But, in this case, this will be a marker in his life of like, this is what happened to you when you were just a babe and everything like that. So we made through it. And then, I get it. I found the rec center in Provo because I like to try to work out. Got up one morning, wasn't really paying attention to the weather. Of course, it's Utah. And of course, we had some wet snow, but like a lot of things, the areas are different. We were slightly towards the mountain, not very much, where we stay with my brother-in-law. But when I went a little bit down further into the valley, you didn't get as much. I mean, I was getting little things from people saying like, "What snow?" They're in the same town, but they weren't getting snow, right? So I'm thinking, I'm just like, just don't snow, a lot, and don't snow when I'm leaving. So I can get out of town quickly when I have to leave and stuff like that. I do want to say, except for a few issues in general, I think we found our sweet spot, which is Breeze Airlines out of Dulles right into Provo. It's a pretty new flight, direct flight, and the airline was founded by David Neeleman, who founded JetBlue and was part of Southwest Air and Morris Air, and he's just a serial airline entrepreneur. And so, we bought what they call the nicest class seats, which are their version of first class, but you don't get a hot meal. You just get lots of snacks, right? Whatever snacks you want on the menu, you can have as many as you want. And they're 2x2 seats, and they're kind of nice seats. So, I mean, there were a few issues. There's supposed to be Wi-Fi on board, and there wasn't on the flight to Utah, but it was on the flight out. But I think he's got a winner there because for the same price or less, I would have paid for coach on Southwest to go to Salt Lake City, which would have been 45 minutes away.
Right.
I go into Provo, which is about 10 or 15 minutes away from where my brother-in-law lives. It's just, and we don't have to deal with the traffic. It was great.
Yeah,
it was great.
So better in every way. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Provo is kind of up and coming. I mean, American Airlines even added a flight from DFW into Provo. So it's kind of funny.
There's a lot of you're getting out in my part of the country, and there's a lot of people that ride planes out there that way to ski.
Yeah.
There's a lot of toting people back and forth to the ski places.
Yeah, that's true. I think they're seeing the market because the skiing is not just saying up by Park City. There's skiing all throughout different parts of Utah.
And Provo's a good place to get off the plane to go do your skiing.
Yeah, it's a good place to go. All right, so get all that stuff out of the way and on to business. All right, so we have Oh, wow. 31 days basically till inauguration day. That is coming up fast. I mean, but once again, by the time we get back, we'll be down to less than 2 weeks. It's going to be something to see. I think some people, this is going to be something. I mean, I think this is going to be, this may be the celebration of celebrations.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. And I think that, I think the country is ready for it to let out a lot of joy. There was the choices we were offered were more of the same, or let's really try to change. Let's really try to upheaval in a lot of areas, change a lot of things. Don't sit with status quo on things that aren't working anymore. And you can already see that starting to happen. You can already see them. Trump is basically president already. Biden has, has not really been heard. I guess he did an interview the other day. He was kind of croaking about, what Trump was doing and, what a man he was on the transition and how helpful he was trying to be and all this stuff. He's helpful by, gave a bunch of other people student loan forgiveness yesterday. They're piling up, they're spending money, selling the wall materials, right? They had all these materials they bought to build the wall on the border. And of course, Trump's going to resume building the wall as soon as he gets to be president. And so Biden is selling it off at pennies on the dollar so that Trump will have to spend more money. And as they're doing something personal to Trump, but who's we say Trump spends money. Whose money is he spending? Right? Ours. Right. So out of Biden's spite for Trump, he's running up the charge of something we elected Trump to do, running up the price of who elected to do. This petty and mean and despicable right to the end.
Yeah, I was trying to think, and I don't know, have we seen a period where there's been a transition like this, where the incoming president has laid such a stamp on things that's early before inauguration?
Yeah, it's not really. I don't really remember this ever happening. Obviously, things are, any time they're handing off one administration to the other, things are fading from one to the other, and some things start up earlier than others and whatnot. But this is a situation where the president's basically no complimentus or whatever. And he's bitter. He was thrown off the ticket. When he probably had as good a chance to win as she did, obviously, he does it, his wife is furious and, they're just taking their shots and they're not really doing anything that runs the country. Right. Why is, the Democrats are all mad because, they say Musk is part of the budget negotiation. Well, why is Musk part of the budget negotiation? Because nobody from the White House is, right? Nobody in the White House is worried about any of this. They don't care. They're done. So, there's a vacuum and the world knows there's going to be a change. You can see all the world leaders. I thought Trump was really smart to go to the Notre Dame reopening, right? When he saw all these people and they all came up to him and they all wanted to say, howdy, we're friends again, right? Shake his hand, be seen in the picture with him and so forth. So you can really tell that the world is looking to America to resume its place of leadership. We abdicated it. We've let it go in a lot of ways. That's why you have things like BRICS and you have, people threatening the dollar as the world currency and so forth. Is because there's weakness. There's blood in the water, right? And now people say, okay, America's returning to strength. And I think even our adversaries prefer this, right? They know what they can count on. They know what what they do that will be punished and what they do that won't. So I think America is really looking forward to, and the world is really looking forward to this changing. You can already see like Canada is getting ready to sack its leftist leader. It looks like the right-leaning parties are going to win in Germany. All over the world, like elections are, people are saying if we're going to have Trump as president, then our leader needs to be someone who understands things in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that Trump has already had one term, and you kind of know him a little bit, and this is his last term, that They kind of know how he will probably govern, and he's obviously, we've said before. I mean, the way he's put together the cabinet, the nominations and things like this, all the people he wants to help run government. These are going to be closer allies than ever before, and they're going to put a big stamp on the government. This is on a very Trumpian kind of a thing. So they kind of know what's going on. Yeah, I mean, Biden. Yeah, I mean, he's just been almost totally unheard from for the most part during this phase, which I thought was remarkable. That he's almost like he said, here, Mr. Trump, here are the keys to the White House. You can't move in yet, but in essence, I'm turning over the government to you, even before, several months before the inauguration, because I'm done. I'm like you said, I'm mad, I'm bitter, etc. And it's time for me to ride off into the sunset. And
no one listens to me anyway.
Right. Yeah,
I mean, it's true.
Who's going to listen to me at this stage? They're doing nothing but throwing slings and darts and whatever at me. Right. So it's just an interesting time to see what is happening there. Okay, so you and then you touched on several things there in that comment that you just made, which is so we had Germany. I mean, the confidence vote failed as expected. That was something that had been expected, that Olaf Scholz was not going to win the confidence vote in Germany. Parliament will be dissolved, and elections will have to be called by February, I guess it is. So they're gearing up for that. That looks like it'll be another coalition government. So you got the different factions, kind of jockeying for space. France is doing. France is jockeying around as they're trying to hold their government together. You mentioned Canada. The finance minister quit.
Right.
In a kind of a stunning move. Justin Trudeau is very unpopular. This is the time that I think he's finally done. I mean, they've talked about him, maybe losing elections and being on the outs before, but there's a lot of pressure on him to resign. He's very unpopular. The finance minister too. She was critical of gimmicks. What she called gimmicks that Trudeau was trying to put in there. These like the checks to the population and some tax breaks and things like that, and things like that, trying to placate people. But she was very unhappy, and she's been with him a long time and a very influential person. And so, I mean, he appointed somebody right away, but the damage is really done there. It's like, they're just having a real hard time.
That was like a one-woman vote of no confidence there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. From inside the palace,
Yeah.
Somebody in the palace saying this is not working and this guy doesn't really have a plan, and so I think they're down like 35 points in the polls. So, center left, that's right. He's exactly right. It's bad times for a lot of them. It's also, I think the lady in Mexico has realized how power actually works. I think Trump has, gone from her wanting to stand up and be noticed for opposing him to trying to see how she can cooperate too. I don't know. I guess there has to be election in Canada in October, right? If they don't do it before then, I believe that's when it comes up. And I think Poilievre is poised to win all over Canada, dominating. His party is going to dominate. So I'm almost like, it would be great to see Trudeau voted out whenever it happens, right? But it's almost like let all this steam build up. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we'll have, like a lot of things, we'll have to, once Trump is inaugurated and starts seeing what we can do. I mean, there's the tariff threats, have definitely had an effect on both Mexico and Canada. They were like, we're on the phone. We want to talk to you.
And coming to Mar-a-Lago. I mean, they both, made the pilgrimage. Right. Because, I mean, the thing about it is people don't realize, like, Canada has huge tariffs on us.
Right.
Things like dairy, like most of the, the top part of the country is dairy. And so it's like 235% tariff on American dairy products. So, You know, it's like, oh, we're gonna put tariffs on Canada. Canada puts tariffs on us. They don't worry about it one bit. So, you know, they can either pay the price for that, or they can, you know, be more cooperative.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm not a big tariff guy in terms of just throwing a bunch more tariffs off and, you know, saying we're going to increase these tariffs, you know, 20% or 60% across the board or whatever it is. But it is part of public policy and monetary policy, and it's not just us. I tend to think that the American public as a whole doesn't understand that, you know, it's not just us with tariffs. Other countries have tariffs. Okay.
And do this to us, you know.
Right. We're not alone in this, right?
Right.
So it's like a lot of times this is just a tariff to offset another tariff. They have a tariff, we're going to throw a tariff, you know. Then it becomes kind of a war. It was kind of crazy, but you know, and countries do this to protect certain industries and things like that. They've just, this has been a long time. I mean, this has been, tariffs have been in existence for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
And will, you know, they're not going away. And they are a tool. And you know that Trump's previous tariff policy must have been working to some extent, because Joe Biden kept a lot of it in place. You know,
that's right.
Right. He didn't even dismantle it. They said, oh yeah, no, we'll
it was so bad. Why didn't he, you know, strike it on day one? He never struck.
Right. I mean, they took a lot, you know, just like every other president. I mean, there's always, you know, executive orders, executive actions that undo what the previous president had done. But, you know, he left a lot of these things in place, and didn't say, you know, we're going to do this and that. So, you know, when I see that with change of administrations, it always tells me, it's like, okay, because as I recall, you know, Obama left some things in place from the Bush administration, right? He didn't just wipe everything out. So this is, they kind of look through the list and say, well, these we're going to get rid of for sure. These we actually kind of like. We think these actually might make some sense, so we'll keep these, and then you know, maybe we'll strike them down later if it comes back to bite us in the butt or something like that. But in general, they keep you know, they have this policy of how they manage all those executive orders and everything like that.
Right.
So it's just, you know, for voters, tariffs are a part of the whole economic process, all the policy that goes on. Nothing new, nothing really to see here. And Trump, if anything else, has used this as a very effective tool to get people to come to the bargaining table and say, okay, let's talk. Right.
That's right. And they do.
Right. And they do.
They know, you know, the average American and Canadian doesn't know there's a 235% tariff on American dairy products. But Trudeau does, right? He does know what's causing all this.
Right. And as you know, since I follow the financial markets quite a bit, you know, the market reaction has always, you know, they get negative because they're thinking like, okay, well, that pushes up all the cost of goods. The consumers are going to face more costs. That will then push up inflation. But, you know, a lot of this is just kind of jawboning right now. You know, he's not the president. He's thrown those out there. We don't really know what will take place, but he gets people to kind of fall in line.
Yeah, anticipate the problem and get ahead of it. So
right. So, you know, so I don't get too worked up about this, though. About the only thing my wife was saying last night that she says we have to do is that she saw the Journal the other day, and she saw how, which is not not something that relates to tariffs necessarily, but that cocoa prices have gone skyrocketed to a record high, and so and she likes chocolate candy, but more than anything else, she likes to use chocolate chips and pancakes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
She's like, okay, you have to go to Costco and buy the chocolate chips now. And Costco's not even carrying their own brand anymore. Now they're carrying Nestle. And we're like, okay, I guess we need to stock up.
She's a prepper for chocolate.
Yeah, but you know, stuff like that, you can only buy so much because it won't last forever, right?
That's right.
So you can't. It's not like I can buy a barrel. You know, I can buy
10,000 pounds. That's right.
Yeah, you can't do it unless you're just this baker extraordinaire, which that's not what she is. So yeah, kind of have to figure, like, you know, maybe she gets a supply that lasts roughly as long as whatever the best buy date is on the chips or whatever. You know, that's that's the one thing to deal with that. But yeah, we're still going to have some of these little shocks along the way. But I see these stories now where companies and others are starting to stockpile things in preparation for for tariffs. But those tariffs are potential; they may not come to pass. We'll all have to wait and see whether or not how many of these tariffs will actually be implemented. Once Trump takes office and sorts through everything.
He won't do them if whatever he's squeezing you for, if you give it to him, he won't do it.
Right. No, I mean, if they come, if the country is already, they come to the table and they're already willing to meet whatever his demand, tariffs won't come into play at all. They won't be there and everything like that. All right. In other foreign news, we've got South Korea. So they have an interesting system. So they impeached the president. So this president narrowly won election, and he's a one-term president. That's the way it is. It's a one-term in South Korea. He barely won election, and he campaigned from the right, and so the left is just like always right there, and that martial law thing that we talked about before, that just kind of just blew up in his face, and apparently in South Korea, it's going to be like 6 months. It can take him up to 6 months to kind of sort this all out and actually get a new leader or whatever they're going to do. So he's a president who doesn't really have any powers for maybe up to the next 6 months. I don't know. I mean, this is something that I don't think South Korea ever anticipated really happening quite like this, that they'd wind up kind of in this big power vacuum and all of that. But it definitely has emboldened the left, who wants to try to fill that and then take back the country, which they had controlled prior, to this president or the president before. So part of the problem in Korea is just this: it doesn't really matter if you're right or left. There's bound to be corruption. I don't know why they always fall prey to so much corruption, but there have been several former presidents that have been thrown in jail. After their term or been thrown in jail or have had their terms terminated, I guess, because of that. So it's just the politicians in South Korea are not a whole lot better than a lot of other parts of the world where we see rampant corruption.
Yeah, that's right. And you have a situation where, it's like there's stuff we can learn from it, right? So, how do we deal when a new administration takes over with the acts of the last administration? That is why we have immunity and stuff. So you don't sit there willy-nilly, nitpicking what the previous president did, because anytime power changes hands, the side that gets into office is going to look and see what they can do, who they can prosecute and for what, right? And so that's not really helpful to the country, So you got to pick your spots there. Like, for instance, Trump there's literally hundreds of people that he knows broke the law to do stuff to him, right? And, so he's got to choose. Like, are we really going to go, get all 51 people who signed that letter and put them in prison? You could. It's election interference. They clearly lied. They clearly knew they were lying, and they clearly participated in a scheme to deny Trump the presidency, right? So you could do that, right? But I think what Trump is going to do is he's going to focus on 2 or 3 people who exemplify the problem, and so and seek to punish them in a way that dissuades others, right? That deters crimes in the future. Like I think Liz Cheney is in big trouble, right? That's pretty easy to prove what she did. I think even a jury will be able to understand. Said this. Here are the facts that prove this was wrong. Suborning perjury of Chastity, whatever her name is, Hutchinson, right? What's her name? What's her first name?
Is it Cassidy?
Cassidy, not Chastity. Cassidy Hutchinson, right? So those two are in trouble, and probably not even Cassidy Hutchinson, probably just Liz, because you can get her for both things, and she was the most public one with trying to get her spurs into Trump. So, and and it was personal, right? I mean, she, for whatever reason, I guess it's his repudiation of Bush republicanism, kind of wiped out her family from the Republican Party. or whatever. But, she went over the line in her zeal to get Trump, so, I mean, we need to get it where Republicans are not expending so much energy trying to get Trump, right? We understand the Democrats are going to do it, but it'd be helpful if we could reduce the friendly fire.
Right. I understand that part. And I don't think it's worth spending a ton of time going after all these other people that are kind of on his enemies list per se. You can make an example of some people, and you'll have to kind of see whether or not, you have a test case and see if any of this actually holds up.
Right. The other problem is like, it would be helpful to try people who are not where you wouldn't have to do the trials in DC, because you're going to have a hard time finding 12 people who would convict anyone of doing anything bad to Trump.
Yeah. So Trump needs to, he needs to make this term, just really put a stamp on it and kind of set the tone that he wants to set the tone for. You don't necessarily want to get bogged down with a lot of court cases.
Right. And fix the country and all that. Those people will be repudiated by the voters. Right. Like he says, the revenge should be success.
Well, yeah. And I think just the fact that if there's even a remote possibility or threat that he would come after them and do something, that probably just puts him in a corner and just keeps them from mucking up anything anyway. So
right.
It's just,
that's right.
I think you just have people that are out there like, Trump won, we might be in trouble.
That's right.
So we better hide or play nice or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think Liz Cheney definitely is kind of the symbol of that whole thing, that if there's anybody that he would go after, it would be Liz Cheney.
Right. And that happens to be the person they have the goods on most solidly.
Yeah. So well, once again, Trump can be very unpredictable. He may go down that path. They may decide to do some other things. I don't know. It's 4 years can go by pretty quickly at times, and when you're running a government our size and trying to get all these things done, and he's got I think he's got a fairly ambitious agenda and trying to do things, and so it's like, what do I want to do? It's take the low-hanging fruit, get some of those things done, and then work your way up and do this and then see what you get. All right, one last thing before we swing back to domestic, which is Assad. The whole thing in Syria is just like it's the Assad family, their dictatorial rule. It's over. We're getting a lot.
I'm trying to remember. His father was in charge of Syria when I was a kid. I mean, yeah, that's right.
Right. I agree with him. I think that's basically it. Try to take the high road when you can, and then it does make the left look like crybabies.
Yeah, that's right. But that family had been running Syria for 60 years. Yeah. And they had withstood a lot of attempts on their life and a lot of attempts on their rule, right? A lot of people tried to knock them off a bunch of times. And then suddenly there's an army in the field that's capable of doing it, right? That rolled up the Syrian army a little bit at a time, which is one of the best armies in the Middle East, right? One of the most disciplined forces in the Middle East, right? And so, how did that happen? Like, who was that? How did that happen? Well, we don't really know. You know why we don't know? Because there's nobody there reporting on it, right? There are no Americans on the ground. There's no media there that we can rely on. Our media is reporting on reports, right? Our media does not have anyone actually covering this, right? And back in the day, American media had bureaus all over the world where they'd have reporters they could send into these places to cover. This thing was almost over before Americans realized that it was even possible, right? You weren't hearing anything about it. And all of a sudden, wow, they're almost to Damascus. Wow, they're through Damascus. This is done. Assad has fled to Russia. So, the thing to remember about that is that's then the Israelis went in and bombed all the anti-aircraft, which their anti-aircraft was some of the best in the world, in that part of the world anyway, and all their military assets that they could get. The Israelis went in and they said, you're not rebuilding that army with those supplies on behalf of someone even worse than the Assads, right? You're going to have to start from scratch if you're going to come after us again. And I think the rest of the Arab world is like, yeah, those are a bunch of people. Those assets are, in many cases, Iranian funded, Hezbollah or Hamas controlled, right? So the idea that you're limiting the military reach of Iran in the region is also, there's another thing you won't see in the papers, but it is also something that the Arab countries look at and say, thank you for taking care of that.
Yeah, I mean, this was damaging to Hezbollah, right?
Yeah. Yeah, their reach in that part of the world is basically over. I mean, and they're suing for peace, right? They're saying, hey, let's work out stuff with the U.S. and with Israel and with other people, and, let's chart a different path. Yeah, yeah, because you're going to get killed in the one you're on.
Yeah. What about this army that came in, this HTS group? I mean, what do we know about them?
I don't know a whole lot about them. That's one of those things, like, you should. That's one gift horse you may well want to look in the mouth, right? You want to know what's going on there.
Yeah. So yeah, with as you said, the landscape, I mean, has changed because just as you mentioned, I mean, the media used to have bureaus all around the world, and they could get to a place quickly, but over the last 10, 15, 20 years, all of this stuff has been cut back, so they're further afield and they can't get there, and there's all kinds of issues. They don't have the staffing, to just take somebody and pluck them and then put them over into another area. So yeah, you rely on other reports, and then so as you said, it was so strange that the reports were like, they're here, and it was just boom, boom, boom. It's like, what happened?
Yeah, it's over.
It's over. Yeah. But from the reports, right? It's just like, it just seems on the surface, at least, that the Assad regime was extremely brutal, and they're trying to open some of that up to the world. But I just,
and who else got out of there? The Russians, right?
Yeah,
the Russians are picking up their stuff and running away. So I mean, it's the Middle East is going to deal with the Middle East now, and it looks like the colonial powers are pulling back and letting them sort it out. Well, and that's because they, the reason all this can happen, right, is the world now again understands that the United States is behind Israel unequivocally, right? Not because of anything Biden did, but because Trump will soon be the president.
Yeah, and it seems, I guess, that Assad probably had enough money that he'll live very well in Russia.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine.
While people died and suffered and everything like that, he lived the high life. So
he sure did.
It's just yet another case of this happening once the kind of the door opens a little bit. You're like, just the tragedy of loss of human life, from a family dictatorial who's running a country for so long. Yeah, I mean, right. That's all I've ever known my entire life, pretty much, was the Assad regime.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So, all right. So, you mentioned this a little bit briefly earlier, and I want to talk a little bit more of this now, which is what's the major news story right now is this whole spending bill. And, right. 38 Republicans voted against the last measure. Elon comes in there with a kind of a tweet, and it's like, and is being blamed for blowing it up. Here's one more comment here. Let's get to this. Yeah. Even the other thing about Ukraine too is just that they did the scooter bomb thing.
Yeah, that's right.
And they took out that Russian, was he a general? So
yeah, that's right. The scooter bomb. Yeah,
you better watch out. But so whether or not Musk had really anything to do with this, I think at the very least he highlighted just this ridiculous thing that we have going on in the government about how much money we spend, right? We have this kind of this skinny bill versus the big bill, right?
Right.
It's pretty stark. I mean, Elon's tweets are just so right at the heart of things these days.
Yeah, he really understands the argument. And what happened here is this was people don't realize this is a big deal was going on with this, because Speaker Mike, he cannot pass a budget agreement with just Republican votes, right? Because like 1 or 2 or 4 or 5 of them are going to wander off the reservation for some reason that they find reasonable, right? The rest of the country does not understand, no matter what he does, right? There's about 4 or 5 guys up there who, Massey, Chip Roy, those guys, they're not going to vote for whatever package they put up unless federal spending is reduced to like $20. They're not going to vote for it, right? So, he has to go to the other side to get votes, right? And to get it, through the Senate has to pass this too. So since he cannot rely on the House to deliver enough votes, right, then the Senate gets all this input. All this stuff was stacked into the bill. And, Elon and Trump rightly raised concerns. This is, you're talking about a lot, more than $1 trillion in new spending, right, with a new administration coming in, also tying their hands on some policy questions that the new administration ought to be dealing with, not the old one, right? So, that gets withdrawn, right, because the speaker knows he doesn't have the votes, doesn't want to pass something that helps the Democrats, doesn't help us. So they come back with what we've come to know as a skinny CR, right, which is what we all thought we were getting to start with, which is a continuing resolution that basically says, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. I think hurricane relief for the Carolinas and so forth. And there was another thing or two in there that they're going to that everybody kind of agreed, okay, what we're doing plus these 2 or 3 things, right? And so now all the spending purists on the Republican side, hey, no, you didn't reduce anything. We want reduction. We want things cut right now. Okay, well, if you cut things right now, the Senate's not going to pass it. The Senate is still in Democratic hands, right? It has not changed hands yet, and Biden has to sign it. So if you put something in there with 20% budget cuts, it's not going to pass. It's not going to go anywhere. So, we're at a point now where, your choices are, continue with what we're doing until a few weeks until Trump gets in, or shut it down until Trump gets in. And, to tell you the truth, I'm kind of indifferent. I don't care what they choose. I don't care if it shuts down. I think, we're going into Christmas, New Year's break. We're not really going to use a lot of government services over the next 10, 15, 20 days anyway. And by the time it's over, you have a new Congress and new priorities from the president and a new way of doing business anyway, right? So, I think that the right thing is it looks messy, but the right thing is happening.
Yeah, we go through this every once in a while, right? The Democrats and the media, their angle now is to blame this all on the Republicans. That if there's a shutdown at midnight tonight, and you're a government worker and you have to go to work and you're not going to get a paycheck, it's all the Republicans' fault. They want to throw that on the Republicans.
Who cares? Tough noogies. I don't care about that, right? So yeah, some people that work for private businesses. You know this as good as anybody. Your next paycheck is not guaranteed, right? It's like, can that money get raised, for organizations like ours? And, can we meet the payroll? Did we sell enough widgets this week? These guys get the best benefits you can get, best retirement you can get, and, Congress will vote to make them all whole, whatever they missed 2 or 3 weeks of pay now. Later on, they'll get restored. They'll get a big fat check that makes up for it. So the idea that we ought to accept a ton of bad policy and bad spending so that poor federal workers don't miss a paycheck over Christmas, I'm not there on that. That's like tough noogies. If you don't want that uncertainty, you can't learn to save a little for it, then, don't work for the federal government, right? That's you're not. Your thing is not registering on my sympathy meter at all. Okay. What we have learned here is we're not doing huge omnibuses. We're not making policy in these year-end, get it over the finish line bills, right? That got stopped, and that needs to stay stopped. A good thing's happening here. It's messy, but it's a good thing.
Tough noogies. You're definitely showing your age.
Yeah.
I love that. That was, I don't know how many times I used that in my life, but that's funny. Yeah, you're right. No, you're in general, you're right, because I don't have a lot of sympathy for the government workers either, because as you said, they're going to be made whole. Every time this happens, that happens. Okay, so the media is going to like break out the violin. It's like, oh, these poor people right around Christmas, because we've had this happen before Christmas time.
And they've already started this thing. They canceled $190 million for cancer research. Okay, well, cancer research. We can debate whether this was good research. Is it worth the funding? Is it producing anything? Right? But the thing about it is, cancer research is not an emergency. When you're talking about a CR, right, a bill that says we're going to fund the government till the new government is in place, right? We're just going to keep things rolling along. Okay. You don't put in $190 million for research, right? Research, people dying of cancer. Oh, we got an emergency treatment need. Okay. That's one thing, right? If we don't give them this money now, people will die. Well, that's not cancer research. That's not the case, right? Whatever research this could be, this money could be years even finding its hands finding its way into the hands of the researchers, right? This money might not get spent for 4 or 5 years. It's not an emergency. It can go through regular order, right? If it can't survive regular order, then we shouldn't be spending it. And the Democrats always say, oh, this is bipartisan. I don't care if it's bipartisan. I don't care who was for it before. We've got momentum to stop garbage like this, and we need to take advantage of it. You may never get this opportunity again. You may never get an opportunity, and you answer me this. You've been doing this as long as I have. Have the Republicans ever gone into a shutdown situation in a stronger position than they are right now? Like, I don't remember it. Like, every time, we've been talking about this for 8 years. Every shutdown that has been threatened or has actually happened, we have said what? They need to work this out, because it is a political disadvantage for Republicans every time. You get blamed for it. You get called the problem. You take all the bad effect of this on you, right? It doesn't go to the Democrats. The Democrats and the media blame it on you every single time. So now you have one where you can say, these guys want a bunch of stuff that you didn't vote for, and we're not going to do it. And we're just going to wait a month. And, I don't, you're not, they're using their same old playbook of trashing Republicans for slowing down the works. But I think at this point, you have the country in a mood to say, screw it, shut it down. We'll do it. We don't vote for anything until we get a bill we like.
Right, and what's radically different this time is Elon Musk, right? I mean, he's out there. That's and he's laying it out there, saying this is unconscionable in essence. Like, we can't. This is I'm here trying to improve government efficiency, cut the fat. Let's trim the size of government, and then you're throwing this up right here, right now, just as this administration is coming into power. You have the audacity to throw all the spending up. It's like, no, have you not been listening to what we said? Did you not see the election results as to what people want? And what they don't want is all this extra spending. And it may be for, maybe at least
they don't want, and here's the thing, a key deal of right now, okay? They don't want these omnibus bills at the end of the year. At the end of the year, we just go in and feed all the lobbyists, right? Anything all the lobbyists are for, we all, Democrats, Republicans, join together to take care of inside Washington, of the swamp, right? And so what has happened here is we're not doing another swamp deal, right? We will, it's possible, I believe it's possible to pass through the House and the Senate a resolution that says we'll fund the government at current levels till, February 1st or whatever they want to do, but you're not going to get, that plus cancer research and this and that and the other. Right, it's going to be very narrowly focused. I don't think anybody's going to vote against the hurricane relief, right? Not enough to make any difference. But that's the kind of thing. It's like conservatives. Why do conservatives want to conserve? And so when you have stuff like that, where there are a lot of victims of something that wasn't there. They didn't do, it's not like they did a bunch of drugs and made this happen, right? It just, a storm came, right? We can't stop the storms. And if you're in North Carolina, you kind of don't think of hurricanes as a big issue for you, right? I mean, you're kind of toward the middle, especially Western North Carolina. You feel yourself sort of safely ensconced from hurricanes. But the fact is, I think 3 times in the last century, Asheville's been at or near destroyed by floods, right? Yeah, the less the lobbyists get for Christmas, the better. And we finally have an administration, they're not even in office yet, but they're stopping that from happening, I think another thing is, like, you got to behold the marvel of how much political power Trump has wielded without being president. He's like, he's functioning as president, and all the decisions are being blamed on him, and he is not the president.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I will throw one last thing just at you on this whole thing, which is just Facebook comment from the former lieutenant governor in Virginia from several years ago, Bill Bowling, who was blaming this whole thing on the Freedom Caucus, and he's mad.
I'll tell you what, the Freedom Caucus is in for a reckoning, right? Because they're against a lot of stuff, but they give you nothing to be for, and like Chip Roy keeps going around saying, you guys, and you notice, like, that he gave this big speech on the floor yesterday. The whole time he is turning and pointing his fingers at Republicans, right? He's turned toward his own caucus. You guys, you ran on a platform of cutting spending, and now here you are voting to do this, that, and the other, right? They have to increase the debt limit, by the way, if they want to do the tax cuts that they want to do, right? Because they have not gotten the Democrats to agree yet to score those bills in any other way that, like, you cut taxes by $2 billion, that adds $2 billion to the deficit, right? That's the way it doesn't work that way, right? People go out and take that money and invest it, and it creates a lot of dynamic economic growth. And Trump's policies are going to be to supercharge growth and try to outgrow the deficit, right? That's his plan. Right? No big secret there, but that's what they're going to try to do. But they're not going to, you can't campaign anymore on, tax cuts are bad, because, like, everybody's like, not having tax cuts is bad, right? So that's why they have to raise deficit, raise the debt ceiling, is so that they can lower taxes. Believe it or not, that's actually the deal. So, all those guys, they have a bunch of complaints against our people, right? Because they're not as pure as you. But the line that he uses is, you guys campaigned on this. They're like, no, they didn't really, right? Some did, right? He did. He may have, right? But most Republicans are not going around the country talking about, we will never have any more spending, right? That's, reducing the size of government. I'm for it. I support it. But, if you say, what are the top 10 issues? No Republicans are going to tell you reducing the size of government, right? It's up to us to say why that's important and how we can do it while, accommodating the other stuff that people tell you they want. And they're just, just do my agenda, screw all your agendas, right? If you'll just do mine, everybody will be happy. Well, if that was true, why haven't we voted for your agenda? Because you've been pushing your agenda since the time of Reagan, right? You've been pushing small government for the sake of small government since the time of Reagan, or since the time of Barry Goldwater, actually, right? And there's been, sometimes it's a big issue and you make a little progress. And most of the time, it's something that we care about, and not many people on the other side, or in America in general, do. They don't stop and ponder the size of government.
All right, so we're gonna finish the show on this note. We've got about 4 minutes to the show. I'm going to ask you, Brian, about maybe a couple, 2 or 3 of what you think are the top stories of 2024 quickly.
Well, I think obviously Trump getting reelected was a huge story. I think Musk buying X is probably the transformative story of the decade so far. He basically saved free speech. A third huge story. that the country's not accepting the same old garbage anymore, right? That has changed. There's, we went a certain way for about 30 or 40 years, and we're in the process of an abrupt halt and redirection to another way. Another big story, though, before we go away on all this, that didn't get a lot of play is Rayful Edmond died. Did you know that?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So Rayful Edmond, for those of you who don't live here, he was the kingpin drug dealer of DC back when I moved up here in the late 80s, right? The Georgetown basketball team, when John Thompson was the coach and they were riding high, one of the top teams in the country, they went and played in Las Vegas one time. And lo and behold, here's photos of Rayful Edmond in a hot tub with half the Georgetown team, right? At which point John Thompson said, "Do not ever be in a photo with my players again, right? Do not ever do that. We don't know you, right?" So, but the thing about it is like Washington nodded and winked at this. Official Washington, like, why did it take the federal government to arrest this guy, to punish him, right? Because DC knew what he was doing, and he was doing it all over town. And there were about we're at about 180 or 90 murders a year now in DC. Back under Rayful Edmond, it was 1,100, 1,200, right? Because of wars over crack jurisdiction, crack areas, crack territory, and so forth. They're like, and all the people whose lives were destroyed by the crack, who their kids lived in squalor because they were smoking crack all the time. Right? He dealt a ton of misery to this town, and they were going to let him out the next year. They moved him to a halfway house in Florida because he had been the most productive informant in the history of federal informants. Right? So he had ratted out half of DC. So all those people, it was going to be hard to keep him alive anyway. But he was 60 years old. He supposedly did 4 miles a day on a Stairmaster, and he dropped over dead from a heart attack. So, I think that's a big chapter of DC's history that people didn't understand.
Yeah, and I'll add a couple of things to the stories. I think Biden dropping out of the nominee, that is a big story. I mean, that's pretty historic. How that all was handled. I think that's a big story. I also think as a result of the election, and because of other things going on there too, just the skyrocketing increase in price of Bitcoin, Bitcoin, and other cryptocurrencies are gaining legitimacy under this incoming administration. Since November, it has just been on a tremendous ride. I mean, it topped, I think it hit 106,000 or more, just recently. I mean, it's down. The market kind of reversed course here the last week or so. But, these are just eye-watering, just numbers that defy logic in a lot of ways. I'm not a crypto guy, but I understand. I mean, this is something that is out there. And, with Trump, the way he's put people in office, or he's nominated people, it's going to be very much more pro crypto than the Biden administration, which was not pro crypto.
Right.
So this next 4 years could be a very fruitful time for those that are behind crypto. Just a lot of entrepreneurial things are going to happen, I think, as a result of Trump winning election. We say goodbye to Lena Khan. That's a great story because she just blocked so much. So it's going to be a very different time going forward for the next 4 years. But yeah, so anyway, for everybody, thanks for joining us today. As I said at the beginning, this is our final show of the year. We'll be back on January 8th. So please have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, and then obviously Happy New Year. Hope 2025 will be fruitful for you. And we'll come back with another informative show with lots and lots of news. Thank you, Brian, for being so good and joining. And I think we've had good banter throughout the year. And then finally, for those that didn't know, that we've also relaunched the Accuracy in Academia website. But that also means that I actually have to write some things. So it's coming along. That part's coming along a lot slower, but it's out there. So anyway, thanks a lot, everyone. Merry Christmas, everyone. And we will see you again in the new year. never get this thing. Okay, I see.